All right. Good morning, everybody. Sorry about that. A few minutes behind. Some meetings ran a little longer, so I apologize for that. Thanks for waiting around. Obviously disappointing with the outcome of the game last week. Loved how our players came in yesterday and had a great practice. We got another rivalry game this week, which 100% of our attention's already on, which is an elite opponent in Michigan. Another rivalry game, playing for the Little Brown Jug, and another opportunity. That's what makes playing at Minnesota so great, is you have so many opportunities, especially with this new Big Ten, being able to play a lot of teams, especially with our rivals. So I'm sure you have a lot of questions about the game from last week, which was disappointing second half, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But ultimately, I'm responsible for how our team plays, and I think we've had two bad halves of football in 4 games when you look at it, that in terms of performance. When you go back and look at and you evaluate yourself constantly and you go back and reflect, as a head football coach, my job is to get our team to be able to play their absolute best for 60 minutes, and haven't been able to do that in 2 of the games, in my opinion. So that 100% falls on me. And, there's always reasons. There's no excuses, but there's reasons. And then you go back to practice and you work on those reasons to get those better. And I thought last night our players had great focus to be able to do that. So obviously disappointed that Floyd went to Iowa. Congratulations to them in taking it. And now we got to be able to respond. So with that, questions.
How do you look at the defensive run game scheme and potential adjustments there?
Yeah, I thought it was a tale of 2 halves. I thought we did a really good job in the first half. Again, you're not going to stop Caden John. You're not going to stop him, right? I think, when somebody is that good and their O-line is so good, I don't think you're just going to stop them. I think you can slow them down. And I think in the first half we were able to do that. But it was truly just a tackling issue. If you look at the second half, 3rd and 10, right? Touchdown. They run the football on a 3rd and 10. Like I said, 3rd and 10, not a bad play if you run the football, right, Andy? But they score a touchdown on that, and now it becomes 14-14. We got a 3rd and 6. We got a PI. We can get off the field, but we have a PI. Next play, 40-yard touchdown run. We have 4 people right around it on a gap scheme, and we kind of all knock each other off the tackle. And instead of going in and shooting our gun, which means just go in there and shoot it, we kind of stop, hesitate, break down, and you can't do that against him. And we did it way better in the first half than we did in the second half. And so it became a tackling issue in the second half, and we missed one tackle, or we'd hesitate and not shoot our gun. We wouldn't shoot tackle, we'd break down, and you do that against that back, and you can coach that, but you got to go apply it. And we did it in the first half. We didn't do it in the second half. It wasn't like just nobody was there. We had people where they needed to be. We just didn't make the play. And sometimes that was a one-on-one tackle. And they put some schemes in place where it's a one-on-one tackle with the safety, or it's a one-on-one tackle with the corner. There's times that we swarm tackled, but again, we knocked each other off like bowling pins, and it just didn't look good. And we got to coach it a lot better. And that's what we did for 20 minutes last night, truly focusing on that piece. We didn't fit the crack replace very well. They got us on a few times with the crack replace, and we missed a tackle. But it was one of those where it kept happening in the second half, and that's the head coach's responsibility to make sure that stuff doesn't happen, and it did, and it was unfortunate. But those are if you want to call it the reasons, that's what was going on. And I know I told you that I'd have to be able to look at film to explain to you exactly why it was happening, and that's what happened.
You have to talk about coaching, scheme, personnel. There's 3 different buckets you look at when evaluating. So when you look at the second half, offense, defense, special teams, which one of those?
All 3. I think everybody has to take responsibility and accountability for it. I think coaching, again, I didn't do a good enough job adapting to how the game was going. I wasn't a very good head coach in the second half. I thought our schemes, we have people. The thing is, when you go back and look at it, you have to be very honest and say, okay, was this the best play call for the right situation? There's some that you're saying yes. Sometimes you get away with it with no's. Sometimes it's not, and you don't get away with it. Sometimes it's a really, really good play call. But as it went forward, there's coaching stuff that we look at and say, okay, we probably could have put our players in a better position to be successful in this situation. And then there's a player piece that, we got to be able to make the plays when they present themselves. We got to be able to go through our right progressions and take the time that way. We got to be able to make the tackles, when they present themselves. We have to be able to, break a tackle here and there that we're capable of doing. Our eyes have to be in the right spot in pass pro. So I can go on and on. Everybody has to take accountability, but it starts with me. Always has, always will. But you're right, all three of those areas, but it was all three of the areas. And I think that's when you see that in the second half. The game was much closer than what the final score showed. I think everybody in the building saw that. But when you have three huge explosive plays like they did because of, missed tackles, we're in a tough position, and then next thing you know, you're down. And then now you got to, the whole point, our whole adjustments in the second half was 14-7. We got to get a stop on defense. And here comes, all things we've set up in the second half in the run game. Well, then we're tied. We basically go 3 and out, and then we go for it on 4th down and get it. And then, we basically don't get any yards in the first few plays of the next drive, and we punt, and now we're down 21-14. I mean, it flipped like that. So what the whole adjustment in the second half was going to be, we kind of had to flip that back to, okay, now we got to be able to throw the ball to get back in this thing. And unfortunately, we, had one interception and a kind of a critical error, and that's what happens. And that's how they get you. That's how Iowa gets people. It's not just us. It's how you get you. They're like Iceman, man. They're cool as ice. They play a really steady game. And, the run game was really, really good the other day, and the back played an exceptional game.
Your offense in the third quarter struggled there.
Sure
was
did.
there anything, one particular thing that you felt was deficient?
We didn't run the ball with very much effectiveness. We didn't throw the ball with very much effectiveness, and probably could have called better plays. And I could have been a better head coach. Besides that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? Right? I mean, it wasn't. It just wasn't. We just couldn't get into a rhythm and couldn't get into a flow. And that's part of the reason. You can feel things as a head coach. You just don't just. You're not rolling dice, and just hope numbers fall on numbers. Even when it's 14-14, going for it on 4th down, I could see. I mean, they were running the ball in the first half. They were running the ball well, but we were stopping them. But after that first big explosive play, you're like, okay, well, we better be able to stay, stride for stride in this thing, and because you don't know what the true issue is just yet. You get to be able to go back at the end of the game and say, okay, in the second half it was this, but that was the end of the game. But you can feel certain things here and there, and decided to go for it. We got it, but then we went 3 more plays and punted. So again, Randy, just a lot. It's all consistent with just not executing at a high level, whether it's coaching or whether it was progressions or whether it was open people that we weren't able to get the ball to, or whether it was maybe a missed block here or there. And just we weren't in sync in the second half, which ultimately falls on me.
PJ, obviously there's high expectations for John Joyner, both from the program and from himself. What needs to be done to kickstart him?
Well, I think he's played really hard. I mean, people are getting the ball out of their hand way quicker. This isn't like we're playing a bunch of these drop back teams just sit back there, and they are. I think he's been very disruptive. I think he's been good in the first and second down run game. I think he can always be better in the first and second down run game, but people know who he is too. And not only that, I mean, we've got other guys that are getting freed up and creating pressure on the quarterback, but, I was not going to sit back there and drop back, 25 times. So it's going to be a little bit more of that run stopping skill set for him. But I know that, he's going to continue to get better. I mean, he works his tail end off. I think when they start presenting, and think of some of the interceptions we've had is because he's provided the quarterback pressure. Instead of taking the sack, they've thrown it up and we've got an interception. So I see it on both sides of what you're saying. But I know that he's getting better and he's playing his butt off and he's working really hard. And I know those things will start happening and breaking his way a little bit.
Michigan won in an eerily similar way, barely passing the ball and really relying on 2 running backs similar to Patterson and Johnson. They had Edwards and Mullings who kind of torched that USC defense. How do you prepare for that and it becoming a hostile environment this time?
Yeah, well, I think, I think we played in some hostile environments before. I tell you what, our fans at Huntington Bank Stadium and our student body was unbelievable the other night. It was rocking. That was as loud as I've heard it in a long time. And that was tremendous. So the environment they create, we create a lot of that. You can't hear in practice anyway. You guys have been there before. I mean, our guys can't hear. And, the big house is not called the little house. It's called the big house for a reason. But we can't let the circumstance dictate our behavior. And, you got to be able to play anywhere in the Big Ten. And you've been preparing for that all offseason. In terms of their offense, I mean, they're going to run the football. They did that with Jim Harbaugh. They're doing that with Sharon. And they're doing it in a lot of unique ways, especially with the quarterback change. They're big. They're strong. I mean, we've got to be able to stop the run. And we know that. Now they're going to have things off of that with the play action pass and when you are doing that. And but again, if it was a big schematic issue, I would sit here and be like, okay, I'm really worried. There are people nowhere to be found. We have people everywhere where they need to be. We just got to be able to go make the play. Part of the reason last week was just we wouldn't fire our gun and shoot tackle, which the first few games we've been pretty good at. And for whatever reason, we weren't doing that very well in the second half. But that'll be a big emphasis, is to be able to slow that run game down. Again, I don't know if you stop Michigan's run game, but you can slow it down by a lot of different things. And that's what we're working on right now. But we got a lot of respect for them and what they do and how they do it. And they do it at will. You know, that's the one thing that Michigan's Michigan. I mean, they do it at will. They run the football at will. That's what they do. And, you know, they use their personnel very well.
PJ, is there anything that you want to share as to how your players came out physically from the game Saturday?
I know they were really disappointed, Dave, if that's what you're asking. You know, some bumps and bruises, but we came out pretty healthy. We went into the game missing some of our key guys in the secondary and some other guys that, you know, we could have used in that game. But it gives guys valuable experience to go in there, and a lot of young players that have the ability, and they're playing at a high level. A guy like Saquon Bryant's playing at a really high level as a redshirt freshman, probably playing before he should play, but he's playing at a really high level. And every game he's learning something new and different that he could do a little bit better. So we got some guys back that hadn't played all year, so getting acclimated to playing in games again. But you got to go out there and perform from the start. But besides disappointment after the game, I thought they were pretty good health-wise. But they were disappointed. The good thing is, I think I said this the other day, there's disappointment and discouragement. They're disappointed. You know, they came out yesterday fired up, ready to practice. And, you know, we know the schedule we have. We know the Big Ten. We know, you know, it's going to be a battle every single week. And that's what's exciting about it, too. But, again, we've unfortunately played two inconsistent, if you want to call it, bad halves of football in 4 games, and it's cost us 2 games. And we got to be able to fix that, and that falls on my shoulders. And we got to make sure that we can play the way that we start a game, the same way in the middle. You know, start fast, accelerate the middle, and finish strong. And if we can do that, I mean, this is a really good football team. I really like our football team. I've told you that before. We play some really good opponents, but that brings out the best in you. And unfortunately, those two halves caught up with us.
You guys have been pretty good about flushing results, win or lose. Is it easier to do that this week with another rivalry game 2 weeks in a row?
Yeah, I love your questions because they're very similar, right? You know, we talk a little bit about, you know, we don't let the circumstance dictate our behavior. You know, it's kind of like after a loss, which hurts worse, or, you know, if it's a close loss, does it hurt more, or is it a blowout hurts more? They all hurt the same. You know, loss is a loss. You know, each game's its own entity. You have to be able to be trained to just let that go like a goldfish, flush it, move on. And our team's really good at doing that. They were really good after the North Carolina game and responding the way they were to Rhode Island. You know, I thought they took that win and they responded really well the next week with the back-to-back shutouts. I think our first half of football was really good, responding to a back-to-back shutout and coming out and playing really hard and responding to being down 7-0 to Iowa with 14 straight points. So I don't worry about that with this football team, but you're constantly training it and you're constantly looking for it. It's a great question because I think everybody in the country, you know, 67 teams win, 67 teams lose. And you're always looking to how to tie that to the past week, or was it a letdown? Was it, something like that? But we do a really good job of not letting the circumstance dictate our behavior. We preach that to them. We teach that to them. We kind of, tattoo that on their brains. And they're really good with that. They're disappointed. And it's not like we lost, let's move on. They're very disappointed. I mean, that game means a lot to a lot of people, our fans, our state, our alumni, our players, our university, our student body, our staff, everybody, right? And it's hard to go through that loss, but they've been really good at flushing it and moving on to the next one, just like they were yesterday. And you can always get a vibe of that when you come out on Sunday. And I think that's what's so great about Sunday night practice for us is I get a vibe of where we're at. And then I can adjust that as we go through the week. And I think you're constantly listening to your team based on watching your team, how they respond, how they react, what's the training room like, right? What's the team meeting like? What are the position meetings like on Sunday? What are their body languages like? How do they practice on Sunday? And you get a good vibe for the coming week, and then you can adapt accordingly.
a personnel change on the offensive line, but you got 3 seniors there starting. How do you get them to be consistent now that you're already a third of the way through the season?
Well, I think that's a good question, Ryan. I don't necessarily think it's all their faults. I think again, everything has to start with me. I think we've got to be able to stick to it a little bit more. I think they've played really well at times, and then there's times we haven't played really well. And Ryan, that also goes back to, we're playing some pretty good defenses that do a lot of different things and putting a lot of stuff, starting with game 1 and a new coordinator with Jeff Collins. And there's a lot of new stuff that is thrown in there. And I thought they responded really well and got better as the game went on. You got to give other people a lot of credit too. It's not just, hey, we have 3 senior offensive linemen, and there should never be anything that ever happens. I mean, we're playing at the highest level with some of the best teams in the country. And, I thought for the most part held up in protection really well last week. But I think it's just the consistency of the run game of just getting better at it throughout the game. And I think that's what we need to get better at. And as coaches continue to invest in it. And, and then when we do throw it, we got to be able to make the plays. We got to be able to make the plays, and we got to be able to be as close. Our margin for error is small. Okay. It always has been. In the 8 years I've been here, it's always been small. And so when you miss, you better miss really small. And if you're going to be able to be balanced, that's what the whole thing is. If you're going to stick, you got to be able to establish a run game. You got to be really good at it. You got to be effective at it. Those body blows have to be able to turn into, the third and fourth quarter benefiting you. Same thing in the pass game. You throw an incompletion on first down, it's 2nd and 10. We're playing some really good defenses. This isn't like we're playing elementary school defenses. And now you've got to make decisions, but you want to stay balanced. So I think sticking with it a little bit more is going to help them in the run game. And then also, I think they've been pretty good in the pass pro. It's not about just making the changes. It's about finding the best 5 that play together. And guys are getting better. Again, not a negative thing. Guys are getting better. And I see that progress. And again, you look at 2 opponents we've had. I know what happened in North Carolina this past week, so everybody's going to talk about that. But they're a really good football team, especially when we played them. And then you look at Iowa, it was a really good football team. And the other 2, we took care of business. And we didn't talk about what the issues were because we didn't have a lot of issues. But the 2 games that we lost, those are really good competition. Something's got to give. There's going to be give and take because teams are both good. But just staying with it, stick with it, and being more consistent. I know it's kind of a generic answer, Ryan, but whether it's a pass pro or whether it's a run game, you've got to be able to stay more consistent with it and execute it at a higher level. And I know our guys will, and they'll keep pouring into it.
One more for Coach.
You talked about space after the game this
Yeah.
past Saturday. Just what did Iowa's defense do, like adjustment-wise, in that second half that eliminated the space your offensive line was able to create?
Well, I think the space was a little bit more. I meant that a little bit on the defensive side. And to Andy's question, we left too much space. We didn't go shoot tackle. We didn't go close the space. We didn't go attack. We didn't go shoot our gun. We did in the first half. We didn't in the second half, which created more space, which allowed Caden to go be Caden, right? Which allowed holes to be a little bit bigger. And that's where we got beat on the space category. On the offensive side, it was just, we'd miss, or we wouldn't hang on a read a little bit longer. We'd get off it a little quick, and there'd be an open guy that would become open, but we were already moved on. And so we didn't have many opportunities in that third quarter, right? And we weren't very efficient. And when you're not very efficient in the run game or the pass game, and the other team is, and you're creating space on the defensive side of the ball, it's going to be a long half for you. And it happened really quick. But the space category for me was a little bit more of on the defensive side. And on the offensive side, it wasn't like we weren't creating it. It was just we didn't make enough plays that I felt like we could make in the first few possessions of the second half. And if we did, I think it's a different story. Yep, thanks, everybody. Row the boat, Sky, Go Gophers. Thanks for being here.